for all coming so at this funny hour, and I promise to be very lengthy, so you'll miss dinner. It's always a pleasure seeing the SACI students, the new students that have arrived. There are a few faces I know, a few here and there, and especially the folks who've been here for a year from doing their MFA. I just want to say about the school, it was kind of to fulfill a dream of mine. Because when I came here, David mentioned, I came here on a Fulbright in 1956-57. The city was fantastic. It was destroyed. It was still suffering the damages of the war. People were poor, but they collaborated. There was a social sense of being in this world together and trying to get forward. And there was optimism. But there was great poverty. There was no garbage. There was no junk. There was no plastic. There was hope. And that experience was extremely important to a 23-year-old from the Bronx. I somehow or other seemed to understand Italian almost without knowing it, which was fortunate. And I made friends. And then went back and did all the things that David said about, I worked for Lincoln Center and lots of different publishing houses, but always painted. And I guess the discussion about, the main point of my discussion tonight is about that, the compulsion, the obsession to paint, and second question, what does the painter do? What is the painter doing? What is the role of the painter? Okay, so let's start out by showing you some of the stuff I did when I wasn't much older than you students, and certainly younger than a few of the others that are here. Please go ahead. This is, incidentally, for those of you who have already looked at my website, you know what this is. This is my website. But that's me in 1956. And these are the things I did while I was here. I did these things of what I saw in the streets, which were, the poverty was everywhere, and to make money, a man would take his little girl, and he had this pole, and she'd climb up the pole and do gymnastics. And then there are other paintings. Move along to the next one yes, these are terrible reproductions, I'm afraid. You can see some of them better in afterwards. I have one of the catalogs these have come from. This is a major catalog done for a big show I had. This is about the way the poor got out of their lives by going on the giostra and trying to get the gold ring out of the middle. Go ahead. This one, do that one, the next one, the one you got pointed, This I did on the way back from Italy. I stopped in Spain. And in Spain I saw people who had been mutilated during the Spanish Civil War. And they were in the streets screaming, "Lotteria, números para hoy." And to my surprise, I found out that these were not veterans of the people who lost, because they were given no rights. These were the veterans, disabled veterans of the fascists. Things were bad. Move along. Okay. This was one I did when I came back. We can move along. As you can see, they were strongly expressionist. I'd made a choice very early on that I wasn't going to be an abstract painter. I could do it, I did it, but I never felt honest about it. I never felt honest about making purely abstract work. I enjoyed and loved the discussion between color, form, and shape. But for me, because of my particular personal story, content had to be more than material. The material had to have a content that spoke about life, that spoke about my concerns, that most arrogantly, and this is where I'll begin this discussion of what does the artist do. For me, the artist had to be telling their story as if they were writing a book. And that has implications. No writer would write anyone else's book the same way. They might write a similar theme, but it had to be thoroughly filtered through their own life, and what came out would not be like anyone else's book. And that's what I believe about painting, that if you work to find that which is genuinely your own, it will be very different than that which is a addendum, a selection, a boiling down of a lot of other people's discoveries. I'll talk about discovery later on. Go ahead. This is my first son with his first bicycle, 1966. Marilyn, the state trooper. I'm still in touch with Marilyn. I'm not in touch with the state trooper. Okay, so now let's go back to another section. This is after I'd come to Italy, and that's me with my daughter, who's now 45, in Venice, for a show is having at a gallery called Venezia Viva, and the pigeons are probably the same pigeons. Let's go down to some pictures. Yep, that's a family pic. This was remembering who I came from, the Who people. This was, again, a discussion and the beginning of a technique that started to be important to me. Notice where the figures appear out of the dark, and they're suggested figures. They're not drawn, they're not volumetric, they are revealed. And this appearing magically became very much a way of personal expression that met my ideas of combining form with content that was really my own. It was genuine. And you have to recognize it. Then I went on, I did more of these, which are, this system is called frottage, and I'm sure you all know that Max Ernst worked in frottage. And I did frottage, but also much less pure than frottage. I did rubbings, transfers, collage, anything that would give me a mark and help me find my story within the marks. Moving along. This is actually a portrait of somebody I knew. Of course, a very subjective portrait. It was my portrait of her, not what she looked like, but who I thought she was. This was very gifted hoop dancer. Okay, let's move along fast now.
Do you want to keep going through?
Where were we before?
We were in the 70s. 80 to 83. 84, 89, 90, 92.
Yeah, let's do 84 to 89. I don't know what I did then. Well, I'm sorry, but I have been painting for 60 years. So. Okay. I wish we could see these reproductions are really bad, but because they're from a book, from a website. A lot of my discussion is about relationships. I admit that I've been married 4 times, and I have 8 children between my own children and stepchildren, and that gave me a lot of food for my painting, and a lot of people I was dealing with. It wasn't just 3 or 4 people. It was a very exciting and sometimes trying set of circumstances. Over here, unfortunately, this painting was done when my wife died, and I lost my wife in the end of 1983. And art is a crazy, wonderful way of living if you get really into art. And those of you that are deeply involved in art, and I know that there are of the more mature people, almost all of you are deeply involved in art, the art world. I've had friends, contacts, people all over who I know share my own mad need to make images. And that provides a community that is beyond language and has fed me very much. At the death of my wife, my gallerist from Orvieto came up to me and he said, in April we're going to do an exhibit to honor Jill. And of course I said, get out of here. Leave me alone. And then 3-4 weeks later, you're alone with your ache and your loneliness and your frustration and your anger. And I started painting about her death. And I painted about 20 pictures. About 2/3 of them are pretty bad, but about 4 or 5 are really quite good. This was one of them. Go ahead. this was about an interment, and it was sort of related to her, but it was when I was getting past it. Go a little further along. Next. Next. Oh, no, go to 1980. See the couple? Yeah, do that one. I had rebuilt my life and had a new relationship, and this painting was about that. It was about a relationship with a new person, and the mingling of form, the being able to be part of another person was what I was trying to speak about. Go ahead. And then I did a self-portrait. Move along. Let's go up to... No. Okay, let's go to another batch. You're good at this, Molly.
Got a lot of practice. Rehearsing all week.
92. Yeah, do the one with the couple with the red, yeah. And this I used as a cover on a catalog for one of my big shows. Oh gosh, I don't have that one here.
Are you sure?
Yep.
It's all three?
Oh, this is it. Yeah, that's it. I don't know if you can see it.
Well, they can come up and look at it after.
Yeah, I brought these things along so you could look at them afterwards. They have little gizmos in them, so if you try to steal them, they ring when you go out the door. Okay. Let's go to another. Let's go further along. Oh, yeah. Yeah, do the yellow one. Again, here you see where the paint is applied in a non-traditional way. I'm not trying to describe a thing. The thing describes itself to me. Now, I don't want to say Rorschach test, but after you, and I do remember that I spent the first, 15 years of my art study, 10 to 12 years of my art study, back in a time when you were taught to draw all the bones of the body and name them, all the muscles, do a tonal study of the body, do a plan for a painting where you squared it off, transferred it to a canvas, did a tonal structure first, then you applied local paint, and then you glazed, and that was called painting. And it was a system, and it does work. But for somebody like me, it wasn't, the technique was too much about the technique. It wasn't for a cause. There was not a motivating, generating issue beyond being good at doing this stuff. And I guess it was lucky because I always felt like I had to tell my story. I don't want anyone to tell me my story. And in a way, when they're saying, doing this system is what it's about, I found very limiting and academic. Let's move along.
Any more from here?
No, let's go to the next. Where were we? Does anybody remember where we were?
This is next.
I think that pretty soon we can get out of these into some of the other stuff.
Should we do the other presentation?
There's so many images. Oh, do that embrace. Here's another embrace. No, this yellow. Yeah, this thing of one person becoming part of another person, the blending of where does one person start and the next begin, the end and the next begin. Because I have, as you probably can tell by now, I'm a deeply emotional person, and I find it hard not to be so, especially in my close relationships. And I've explored that own drive that I have, sometimes with self-ridicule and sometimes with schmaltzy love.
This one, Jules.
That's a good term, schmaltzy love.
That's fantastic.
Good.
The more schmaltz, the better.
Okay.
What about this one?
Well, if you want to look at it.
I just thought for some reason.
Yeah.
I thought it was from a different thing.
I'm trying to remember who bought this painting. That's the other nice. I'd have to say with a certain amount of pleasure, and also to encourage you, that I recently calculated how many paintings I've done in my life. I mean, paintings, and it's over 2,000, and I only own about 150 of them, and I didn't give them away, except for very few. So I've been a very lucky painter. I've been able to place many of my works. I don't know if people may have burnt them later, I don't know. But most of my pictures were placed. I've done over 150 one-person exhibits, and I am so very lucky. And I want to say this now, too. I know it's to a degree luck. To a degree, it's my personality, it's my background, it's my ability to try to communicate in all ways, and the conviction that what I made was genuinely mine. But there are many people out there, very good people, who've never sold a painting, who've never had a show. There are lots of artisti nascosti in the world who really are very good, or even very extremely good, but we don't know about them. And I say that to keep those of us who have success sort of in balance. Commercial or professional success does not mean you are a very great artist. There's some great people out there, and always have been, who were never discovered their own time or ever discovered. And occasionally you come across them as you go through museums. You say, this is so-and-so, the brother and so-and-so in Amsterdam. There's a father and son. And there are two artists up in Milano in the Civic Museum. You say, why didn't I ever hear about these people? And it's rather important that those of us who have been more fortunate remember that there are those who are less fortunate and maybe even better than you are. Next. Next what?
Next what?
I'm just trying to decide. Maybe we should. I think at this point, because these are such crummy reproductions. Okay, this is a. That's on the cover of another one I have here. See? And that's this one.
Yeah.
Um.
Go to the presentation, or do you want to go through some other pages on the website?
Well, why don't we have a discussion with everyone about what we should do?
Okay. Let's open up the floor.
I think that I'll just talk about this one picture, and then we can go through the other stuff.
Okay.
This one was The Witch's Sabbath. It was a very successful painting and a lovely show I had in the city of Orvieto. And I have to again here publicly thank Italy and all the different people in Italian culture who have always been so kind and generous towards me. I'm in the collections of cities like, Orvieto and Pisa and Arezzo and, you name it, and all over Portugal too. And I have to put in a plug for Portugal because it was mentioned before that I did a show in Porto in June. I've had 18 or 20 shows in Porto, in private galleries, in museums, in foundations, and although you're not going to make $1 million exhibiting in Porto, it is so very gratifying. The people are intelligent, informed, care about culture. The food is wonderful, the wine is wonderful, they're open-minded, the sea is incredible, and I urge all of you to go to Portugal. Next, let's go to the other stuff.
Now would be a good time for you to sing.
Ah.
No.
Is that the way we're doing it?
You're going to sing, and then we're going to... Here we go.
Oh.
Okay.
These are works of the last 4 years or so, 3-4 years. And this was done for my 77th birthday as a picture for me, to myself, by me, about me. And it's sort of fun. I mean, sometimes I sometimes get very heavy when I paint, but I think when I paint about myself, I tend to be self-ridiculing, which is probably pretty good. Anyway, that's all my stuff. There's a little me with a death mask. There's me having brushes as paint, as candles for the cake. And then there's a lot of other symbols that are important to me on the table. And as you can see again, there's a different way of applying paint where it wasn't spatter, and it wasn't drip, and it wasn't frottage. It was where I moved colors. I said, I need a table, I need a personage, and the personage came out of my marks. I very rarely make a picture any longer from a drawing. I make more drawings from my paintings than drawings for paintings. Next. And to prove that, we have a series of drawings. And I hope that some of the MFAs and some of you will be visiting my studio where Molly will help you see my work. And I draw all the time. I have hundreds and hundreds of books that I've drawn into. I have thousands and thousands of sheets of paper that I cover. And I draw in different ways. I draw from things, but more often I draw from my head. Sometimes the instrument tells me what the drawing is. The first mark sometimes tells me what it is about. Let's go through a bunch of these now. Now mind you, you're always making explorations. You're dividing up an arbitrary rectangle. As soon as you put down a mark, it is saying things to all sides. The second mark is saying things to the mark already made and the four sides. Is there a positive and is there a negative? Is there an object on a space or is it something floating through space? The endless, almost beyond thinking connections that the exercise of drawing all the time has provided me is constantly delightful to me. I mean, I know it's like doing push-ups. It's an exercise that is constantly surprising and gratifying. So anyway, I want you to see these. And as you see it, as you look through the paintings and the drawings, an awful lot of my drawings about this insane activity of being an artist. What the hell are we doing? Why are we doing? Is it important or isn't it? And I can tell you without any doubt, it is important. Because just by doing something that is so impractical in this world of fiscal reality where the new God is gain or profit, people doing things not for gain or profit are revolutionaries. As you can see, I make marks in so many different ways. And for those of you who want some assignments, I'll be happy to give you. Sometimes draw with a very, very fine point and imagine you're skating on ice and there's no mark beyond that which your blade is making as it's going through the ice. Other times take a brush that you can barely control and make a mark and then let that mark lead you into what its name is. What is it? Who is it? What am I doing? How is it occupying this space? A lot of my, what will come out, obviously will be your obsessions, your ideas will come out directly that way, without any filter about, I am now going to paint a series of pictures about women's backs. No. You're making a bunch of stuff and it happens, and then you recognize it. Here's a different way of applying paint. Now this must be about, I guess it's 4 or 5 years ago. And often I explore the whole idea of what are artists doing, artists and the model. This is another painting I did, which was a family painting for my wife and myself at a exhibit I did here in Florence for her birthday. And sort of two of us wrapped up in one another. This is a very angry painting because I'd gone on a vacation in Croatia. Now, it probably doesn't show there, but maybe to help you understand what motivated this rather strange work, was there was this guy walking around the beach, lying down, looking up ladies' crotches, moving over. He wasn't touching anybody. I couldn't do anything. And there was this creep wandering around the beach for an hour and a half, doing things that were sick, unnatural, and so anger-creating in my mind that I got back by painting this picture. That picture was recently sold, yes. Yeah, I like that one, that's funny. A vase full of ladies. Lily, Rose, Daisy. I come back to this one. This is a painting which was very important. I mean, this was exhibited in Rome, I don't know, about 35 years ago. A very good gallery, Galleria Il Grifo on Via di Ripetta in Rome. And it was printed in every newspaper. Everybody printed it. It was like, and people want to buy it. And I said, hold on a second. And I wouldn't sell it. And that began a kind of calamitous situation for me. Because there are about 20 or so paintings of mine that are called Maidoffs because I won't sell them. I even did a show in Milan about, 5 or 6 years ago, where it was paintings that I wasn't going to sell. Maidoffs, I Maidoffi di Maidoff. And it was very funny. We sold some reproductions of them, some scanned reproductions. But in this painting, which, I don't know why, there's something happened here. It was like, where the material and the subject and the hinted at provided a very, very powerful stimulus to the public. And somewhere in here was for me a clue to how to be very expressive. Let's go on. Is that it?
No.
Oh no. So I kept on doing things, not just in black and white, but I just did one. Do we have it in here, the black and white I did? I think.
What?
The black and white frottage, the recent frottage.
Yeah, that's on the
Okay.
next, yeah, we have a...
And these are more paint. This is, I dedicated, go back. This is for Monet, except I have a shark in my pool. Next. I did a whole series of paintings about the table. My feeling being that the table really is the proscenium, it's the stage, where so many very different kinds of human activity occur. People play cards, they meet at conferences, they eat, they gamble, they play ping pong, they do operations, they do abortions. Everything happens on a table. So I did a whole bunch of them. This is a painting I dedicated to, I had a residency while I was living here in there's a German institute here called the Villa Romana, which was founded in the early 1900s by a bunch of Germans. It's still there, it's still wonderful. And I was offered by the director then, Joachim Burmeister, to do a month's residency. I said, Joachim, I have a studio. He said, yes, but this is a job. So I went there for a month and I painted a bunch of drawings and ended up painting this big picture. Because being alone in a place where and I have to say at this point, another gentleman sitting in this room had the same experience. Lorenzo Pezzattini had a similar residency a few years later, right? Is Lorenzo still there?
2 months.
Huh?
2 months.
2 months?
Yeah.
Oh, he doubled me up. I couldn't stand going out there that much. But anyway. Being in a room by yourself, without any distractions, without your family, without all the other things that you own. In my case, it caused me to say, what? I have to do some special research. This is a month. I got got to do something. What? So I said, I have not been painting anything about my childhood. I started doing drawings of like Passover dinners with my grandparents, spotting German airplanes during the Second World War, which there weren't any, but that's what we were taught to do. And then I remembered adolescence, and adolescence is rather wonderful because you said inside there were girls beyond the girls you grew up with. The girls you grew up with were pretty boring, but girls from other places, they were females. And every Wednesday night in Pope Park in the Bronx. Any of you know what Pope Park in the Bronx is? No. It's where Edgar Allan Poe, the great writer, had lived for quite a while, and it's still a museum, it's still a place. And in that same park, there was a rotunda where the bands would come and play. There were big bands. Harry James, you never heard of him, right? You never? Jimmy Dorsey, Tommy Dorsey, Glenn Miller. They come there and play in the Bronx. And people would come and dance. And people would come from all over the city, including people from Harlem, people from Spanish Harlem. And it was wild. And the dancing was spectacular. And of course, as a 14 or 15-year-old, it was a tremendously erotic experience. So the painting really is about that. It's about this adolescent being turned on by music and bodies and smells and everything else. Next. This is a little. This is in my kitchen. Thanks to Lisa Nocentini, I've done some ceramics here. I also did a bunch of ceramics in Portugal with their fabricators, where I painted on vases. Next. This is a big painting. I did a very big painting. It's bigger than this, which. I still have it, and it's a really intriguing version of the. Do you know what the subject is? What painting is it? Medusa's in the name. The Wreck of the Medusa. Virata della Medusa by Géricault, in which you have the big question, life is there and all of a sudden it isn't. How do you survive? What God do you pray to? Next. There's just a hallway in my house. Next. This is a work on paper. I do an awful lot of work on paper too. I think that the importance of the work is in the work, not the material it's done on or with. Next. This is a etching. I don't know why it's in here.
I don't know.
This is
That's a selfie. Jules, that's a selfie. You're in there.
Pardon me?
You see, you're in there.
Yes, it has a glass on it. Next.
Oh, we saw that one. Yeah.
Next. In my bathrooms, and some people here have been to my bathrooms, I did a series of tiles. She knows too. I did a series of tiles which I produced here at the school, right across the courtyard. Next. It's another almost pure frottage. Next. I know I'm showing you a lot of stuff, but I hope that by you seeing a whole lot of it, you get A, a sense of the fact that I really did do a lot of pictures, and B, that some of them may be okay. Next. Very good. Yep. Yeah, these are all stuff from the last 5-6 years.
We have another shot and the next.
Now, Scott, go back.
Is that your
Yeah.
women painters?
It's about mothers teaching daughters. Next. There. Oh, that's a better. You can see it better here, right?
No, we're back at the beginning.
Oh, is it? I thought we started on the end. This is the end.
We started with your...
Okay, that's the end.
Well, now we have the...
Thank you very much. Now look. For the person who asks the best question, they get an autographed copy of this book of interviews, which was printed about 4 or 5. Angelo, quando fu fatto questo? My publisher's over there. L'ultima pagina. Ma c'è scritto il cavolo.
2007.
2007, 4 years ago. No, 7 years ago. It's interesting to me because people always want to get an interview or get you to say something about your work. And there was a project by one of my Portuguese collectors, and also a publisher, and he kept saying, I want to do a book of interviews with you. And he kept on talking about it. Then he said, I got to find the person. Then he decided he wanted to do it. And I realized it would not be my book any longer at all. Fortunately, found a woman who's now the head of the Universidad Católica de Porto, a very good art historian, art innovator, and bright person, who decided she would like to do the interviews. And we did 3 interviews. One was in Portugal, one was in Italy, my house, and another one was driving from Florence to San Gimignano. And it's there. I think there are some copies up in the school library, which are, I think all of these in the school library. But in looking over the interviews, she really asked the right questions, and she was intelligent, and I think I said some of the things that I really do believe. Any questions? Yes. I don't give you a book, Gary.
Very early on, you were talking about doing a portrait of this woman. It was before the Jill series. The woman, you said it, and it was my portrait. You know, you talk about the difference between that and academic representation. Do you remember the quote of Picasso when about his portrait of Gertrude Stein, where they said, well, they were comparing it to a very famous photograph of that period, and they said, it doesn't look like her. And his answer was, it will in 100 years. And I was wondering about that, if you talk about, you know, what's the importance of it being yours? And I guess it's a broader question, the artist, the personality, the person of the artist in relation to his art, and then to the world.
Oh, well, I think the artist, again, is an author. And an author is imposing personal experience, which they are, by so doing, saying, this is really, my opinion is important. My sensitivity is really, being a real artist is a terribly arrogant activity, okay? You're taking the place of God. You're creating. However, knowing somehow that a lot of other people have created a lot of great stuff too. I think unless you have a certain level of moderated arrogance, you're not going to make good art. You know, I think you have to believe in your excellence. And if you don't believe you're excellent, and just think that by working hard you're going to get there, no. You have to have this secret hunch that I'm better than most of those other people out there, and I'm going to show you. And I think that part of arrogance is part of a lot of high performers, you know, in the arts. I think there's some of the opposite kind. I think some great artists were tremendously depressed, self-flagellating people, but they were doing that to such a degree of extremity that it became a tool for art. You know. You made a couple of quotes. I put some quotes in here. I can't remember what they are, but I might as well read them. I put 2 quotes, one in the front, one in the back. Where's my glasses? Here they are. And the back is, James McNeill Whistler, who right now is having a show with Turner in London. Art is limited by the infinite. And then we got one in the front by a certain Jewish gentleman named Marc Chagall, who said, all our interior world is reality, and perhaps more so than our apparent world. Some other questions? Come on. Yes?
What do you think started your
Why did I...
your passion for painting?
There's a story attached to that. When I was about 4, my father brought me a package of yellow paper. He says, Jules, draw every page. And I said, he knew that I really liked, scribble. So I filled it all up. Then, in that same area, like maybe a year or so later, there's this... Jews have a book of the Haggadah during Passover. And we had the illustrations of the Exodus from Egypt. And in this book, there were these old woodcuts. But they were so scary. I mean, I said, wow, I want to do that too. I wanted to try to move people by the things I made. And I think that's where it started. I really do. I said, wow,
So your religion has played a big part.
Pardon me?
Your religion has played a big part in your life.
Somebody translate it?
So your religion has played a big part.
Well, no, my religion, incidentally, yeah, sure, because you read that book, but no more than anybody's religion might, but no, I don't think I think that the accidents of your birth, and I talk about that too, you may even win it. I don't think God comes in different flavors. I'll put it that simply. And I was taught that one flavor was the right flavor. And I said, So right after I was bar mitzvahed, I said, no. And I still believe that God doesn't come in a bunch of flavors. There is. I mean, that's the way I feel. More Buddhist than anything else. Yes?
From Brooklyn, high school in Florence. What made you decide on
I'm not from Brooklyn. Let's get this straight, honey.
Wrong, sorry.
Bronx. That's serious stuff. No, I think that it was indicated before by what David said. I won this Fulbright. Came to Italy in 1956, late September 1956. Got off the boat in Naples. We went up to Perugia for a month, and where they made you learn Italian first. And it was a cinch for me. I don't know why. And I came up to Florence. I remember driving in my old Cinquecento Tipo C. 500. It was car made in 1939. Topolino. Coming up over the hill and looking down in Florence. And Mary, my wife, gets annoyed with me because I can still remember what it felt like. Because it was like a fantasy coming true. It was like Wonderland. And then everything that happened after that compounded the experience. I remember going to the bar, with my jeans with paint on them. Italians didn't do that. And they said, what's that? I said, I'm a painter. They said, oh. And from that day on, this 23-year-old was called Maestro. No, a place where, I guess where being an artist was a legitimate form of activity. That's what got me going. And of course, all the stuff I saw, all the amazing works of art, all this stuff that so many of you are just beginning to experience now. I mean, it's endless. Yes?
What was your first exhibition like?
When was my first exhibition?
What was it like?
What was it like, or when was it?
What was it like?
What was it like? Let's see. My first one-person exhibition. Well, my first important thing was a three-person exhibition in City Center in New York. The City Center Opera House
Yeah, okay.
on 56th Street, 55th Street, 56th Street. No, 55th. Yeah, 55th. And they used to have monthly competition for an exhibit in the gallery that you went in. And I put in stuff, because I was tremendously naive. I just thought I could enter anything, and I did. And I got into every show, and because I got in, and these were different juries. These juries were people like Ben Shaw and Pittman, all sorts of crazy people. And I just did it. And then I was picked, and the three of us had passed the show, so that was my first show. And I remember I sold a painting to a very important ballet dancer, Robert Joffrey. You may have heard of the Robert Joffrey ballet. I sold it to him. $50. And then I bought myself, with the money, I bought myself a ring, which I put on and I was under 20, I was like 20. And I went into the shop and I got myself a ring that I put on my pinky. I said, this is my marriage to art. Yes.
You say you're like a very emotional person. Have your emotions ever gotten in the way?
I really can't, I'm deaf,
Have your emotions gotten in the way
Of like your painting, and if they have, how have you been able to overcome your emotions to work?
I don't get the question. Like your passions?
Have your emotions ever got in the way of your work, and if so, how have you got over it?
That's a funny question, because I think you're implying that in yourself you found that your emotions kept you from working or something. Because, no. In my case, either I was so angry or tired or bored, I didn't work. But the rest of the time, the emotions were just food for the art. I mean, you paint angry, you paint love, you paint sexy, you paint hungry, you paint, hate, jealousy. The emotions are food for the art. In fact, you have to find the emotions in the marks. Yes?
When, as an artist, when you said you look at other artists to admire their work, what other artists do you admire?
Oh my God, the list is so long. I mean, I was talking... Look, we were talking just now to a colleague, and he mentioned he's going to Madrid to look at the El Grecos. Then said, wow, do you know that the painting of the death of the Count Gonzaga is really a skull? And and that, but it never stops. There's artists that Rembrandt. I was looking at something, in here even I was thinking, the lady asked me, do you ever write about your art? And I said, yes, here I was in Portugal, and I was writing in the Gulbenkian Museum, and I said, here, I've written down, I looked at these two paintings, this Rubens and this Rembrandt, and both of them are practically without color. But practically, not really. Because when you look closely, you realize that Rubens has a slightly blue sky, and that the smoky grays in the Rembrandt, yes, you write about art, because artists are constantly inspiring, constantly. And there's all kinds. There was a man named Jules Pascan, whose real name was Julius Pincus, who was a great artist living in Paris, very successful in his own time, in a small way, who painted all the girls in the whorehouses, in the brothels, but in a hugely sympathetic and human way. He was a great artist for me. Ben Shahn was a great artist in his way. Chagall was a great artist in his way. Diebenkorn in his way. Pollock in his way. There's, if you love art, there's a lot to love. There's also a lot to not like. Because there's a lot of things that are called art today that are a result of this new postmodern international art market, because never in the history of humankind has artwork been sold for the kinds of prices that's sold now. When you could support a whole village for 10 years for what a person gets for selling one painting. Picasso at his top never got anywhere near what a lot of practitioners are getting today. And I say practitioners because there's a lot of confusion. The art market needed product, and there are people who are producing product. And let's confuse the issues enormously, because people are judging the value of a work by the dollars that it gets sold for. And that's bullshit. And I said that's just nonsense. You know, Rembrandt didn't get big bucks. Rembrandt's great paintings were paintings after he was broke. He did very well and painted some nice pictures. You know, the corny picture of him with his wife with the gloves looking at his shoulders. He was a big, successful commercial artist. Then he went bankrupt. And all his great paintings were done afterwards when he was bankrupt and barely scraping along from a couple of students. And we know it because we have the bankruptcy list when they sold everything he owned. And it's fortunate because in the Rembrandt house in Amsterdam now, they reconstruct the house because they knew what had been in it from the bankruptcy list, the bankruptcy sale. Oh my goodness, yes.
Going off of that last question, I noticed, since we looked at your work chronologically, that you've gone through a lot of stylistic changes over the years. The artists that you admire influence those stylistic changes? What exactly influenced different stylistic changes that you?
I'm sure that I probably, if I went back, could say, when I was painting that, I was thinking a lot about that. Mm-hmm. But it's more like in stages. Like in the beginning, I was very much influenced by American social realism mixed with German expressionism. Okay, that was my shtick. I loved it. I still do. But then other things started happening. It changed a little bit, So I could probably go back and recreate, who was influencing me when. But I like to believe that the influence was internalized and turned into my own. This is the last question because I'm hungry.
What was your first success like?
My first success?
As an artist.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know how to define success.
Well, you really felt that you started to be well known as an artist.
When you're in it, you don't notice. I was very, very lucky. I was a successful designer. I had lots of money. I could travel. I could paint. I could show. And I don't think I thought of myself as successful. I was just doing stuff. And that's honest. I now, looking back, I realize, wow, was I lucky? I mean, I was really lucky. And it was sort of, again, the same, naive. Part of me is naive. Part of me has always been sort of naive and direct and brash and uncomplicated. What you see is pretty much what you get. I'm not good at pretending. I'm not good at lying. I'm not good at deceiving. So. No, I don't think I could say yes, that was... I mean, things happen. At the same time, something good would happen with the show. Something terrible would happen in my life. My father would die. Stuff happens.
I think there were two more.
She's the monitor says that yes.
The one that you were saying, the one that was published all over Italy, the one drawing you said that you won't sell. I don't know if it was the painting.
It was published in the newspapers.
Yeah, that one. What was the subject matter?
You saw it, didn't you see it?
Yeah, no, I saw it, but I was wondering, what was the subject?
Come on. It was a loving pose. It's called The Embrace. The Embrace.
Well, and the same question, what were you saying that was what was the technique you were using?
I can't think.
What's the technique? What is
Frottage. Frottage. And I'm sure that your teachers will teach you frottage. Write it down. Frottage. It was given that name by, I think, Max Ernst, but it's something other people have done. It's where you put down color and then you take off color and you use different you just create texture. It's nothing complicated.
And there was one more, this is the last one. This young lady here.
Last question. What do you consider like art versus a product? Like, if someone throws a pile of clothes on the floor and calls it a sculpture, is that art? Like, what do you consider real art versus a product?
No, I'm
One sentence. 2 sentences.
I think there's a lot of things that when I was a kid were more clearly defined by what they were. They were different. There was a lot of hobby work. There were hobbies. There was decorative art. There was commercial art. There was fine or high art. There was utilitarian art. There was commercial art. And those definitions, which were pretty clear. If I was making a sign for roadworks, it was a graphic thing. You know, if I was making a horse to put inside the saddle shop, it was a piece of stuff for that. It was display. And then there were also people who had hobbies. And I've used this example more than once, but it's true, so that's why I remember it. When I was a kid in the movie houses on Saturdays, there was hobby night once a month. And people come in and put in the things that they've done as a hobby. And I remember one thing that knocked me out. This guy had built an Eiffel Tower about 6 feet high out of toothpicks. Today, that would have been a very serious work of art. In other words, things that at one point people did for fun, or for compulsion, or because they were nuts. Today we have art brew, which is worth a lot of money, you know. Then it was just separate activities, nothing less important, but it was just different. And indeed, prices for art, as I said earlier, were not that enormous. Artists didn't make huge amounts of money. You know, they did okay, they got by. But activities of today are all like, for instance, a lot of, social art. People would separate their activity from their political or social activity as an artist. People like Ben Shahn did posters, Picasso did posters. They didn't consider fine art or high art. They were doing something that had a specific message about a specific cause. Today, there's a lot of stuff that's called art because it's about a popular cause. And it can go from everything to patriotism, feminism, occultism, and it is, that's good because it's about things that's important. And it's not art, but it's being confused. And I think it's very unfortunate everywhere. I'm a feminist, but I don't pretend that, I'm not going to make art about that subject because that's not who I am. My politics are feminist. My paintings Maidoffist. I think we have to call it in. But we have an important problem. A very important problem. Who won this? Who? I don't let you decide who won it.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Maybe I can resolve it. Anybody who would like a copy, I think we have copies at SACI, and if you come and see me, I can get your copy. So we have everybody to do it. Jules, thank you.